I'm going to kind of discuss today my viewpoints of the medical industrial complex and why I'm for Hillary Clinton to be our next president. While I like Bernie Sanders and I feel like he has some merit in what he's saying, I'm not completely a person who feels that the best plans are served by him. I get irritated by his self righteousness, his arrogant attitude, his dismissive ways of dealing with the secretary, and the fact that in the end, even though we're dealing with an abusive medical system, and I have type 2 diabetes, I'm on insulin and a number of blood pressure medicines, and my costs of my medicines are very expensive, and I often have to go in and get medical procedures done. And thank God the ACA was passed and it has been implemented such as it is. I do see it as generally benefiting people of color and generally not benefiting somebody like myself. And I just got done working for a pharmaceutical company. And one of my major irritations with them was the attitude that the costs of their medicines are justified. They are not. If you look at Pfizer Lipitor medicine, Lipitor originally, before it was on patent, costs about $500 a month for a course of medication. Now, if you have health insurance and your employer is paying for it, or the government or whomever is paying for the plan, it's a good deal for Pfizer because they can just stick the costs and all the research and development, legal, and all those things down that rat hole. As soon as the medication went off patent, Lipitor did, the cost went down to $15 a month, maybe 50. It's very low cost. And so any manufacturer can get in there, make the same molecule off patent, and essentially the costs go down to tubes. And my other bigger bone to pick is most other countries like in Canada, Europe, and others have single payer healthcare systems. They don't pay the same costs, but often they come here in their pharmaceutical companies and they sell their products here, and we are stuck paying for the costs of research, development, legal, all those costs, while they get the windfall of our development of our technology. I think that's unjust. Now, I could understand if it's a third world country like India, Pakistan, some of those places where the, their their standard of living is very low. You can understand that. But in places like Canada, Europe, whatever, Australia, Taiwan, don't give me that. Or Japan, they don't pay those costs. And so the concept, the idea of the healthcare costs being questioned and the fact that they're recorded in those countries as single payer and it's considered socialized versus it's not here, I don't think passes the smell test. The part that makes me mad is our present Senate will not ever go ahead and investigate them, haul them up in front of the Senate and justify why they are doing what they are doing. Nor will the Kaisers, nor will the Blue Shields, which is owned by the American Medical Association, AMA, which is the doctors, is going to happen anytime soon. And they were the recipients of the Affordable Care Act, and they've gotten this huge windfall. And the real question is nobody really knows what the costs of the health care is in this country. They know to a lesser extent in Medicare, but not in Medicaid so much or even the private. And the companies bear this burden. And I may sound like a racist that I get irritated seeing black people and Hispanics get the benefit of the Affordable Care Act. And in some ways, Mitt Romney was right. It is a huge gift for them and the large percentage of the voting bloc that the Democrats will exploit in November. And they have a right to do so. But meanwhile, I'm at the bottom. I was paying $700 a month last month for an employer plan where essentially I couldn't get any of my medicines taken care of. Last week, my healthcare plan ran out. I got fired from the job for, let's just say, the reasons of corporate stupidity and reasons of the fact that I don't think like anybody else. I have my own attitude, the way I act, and I often say what I think. In other words, I can sort of understand and empathize in some ways with Donald Trump, but I don't have huge fortune where I can sit there and buy my place to the table and just say whatever comes to my mind and say racially insensitive things, act like a boor, and sit there and just boo people off the stage, act like a jerk. And essentially, I bought my own way in, and who cares? And what makes me angry is the church is often in bed with these people. They're often sitting there getting the benefits of stock bequests and other monies handed to them. Meanwhile, they rail on about abortion and all that, but they tell them, essentially people like myself, to go to hell, go die. The county was the only one who took care of me this last week, and I say thank you. I went to my church and asked them for help. And I guess in a sense, it's like when you hear the same plaintive cries over and over and over again, they get insensitive and they have their little mindset and their way their mind works. And I don't like Bernie Sanders at all. I feel like he's self-righteous, he's rude, he's overbearing. He is right in some areas, and Donald Trump, ironically, is right in some areas. But I don't believe in the fact of making America great again while you're going to sit there and kind of roll over the rest of us, is kind of the mentality. And if you don't happen to agree with me, while we're all Americans, I don't really, in fact, in a sense, care for even Hillary Clinton, but I feel like she's the best, most qualified person. And I don't feel like I would vote for Sanders. I've met some of his people. They're just as rude and as obnoxious and self-centered and self thinking that I'm right and the rest of you is wrong. And it doesn't work that way. Nor is it the issue of you capitalistic pigs. But at the same time, I have the rage of the capitalistic pigs because those people have just been grinding me under their thumbs. And in some ways, I feel like throwing the match into the tinderbox like the Bernie bots. The rage of the poor at the bottom in the ghetto, sitting there angry at the rich white masters as they're grinding me into the ground. I understand it. As a younger man, I used to actually hate rich people and capitalists, and I don't. I actually don't hate rich people or wealthy people. What I hate is bored, wealthy people that misuse and squander their wealth and their affluence and their vulgar appetites. And I see a lot of this in the society. In certain ways, it's very similar to the Depression. In certain ways, the same mentality is kind of coming out. And it deeply distresses me because we're all Americans. And the mass media doesn't care about the truth. They only care about just stoking this food fight and this thing when we've got really serious things about how this country is headed. And I do believe that healthcare is a fundamental human right. I don't believe in the present capitalistic model of healthcare, being the way it's being delivered, being the fact that it's a speculative bubble, being the fact that the issues of how it's being researched, the issues of like my psoriasis, if you look at my arm and it's clean and it's nice. You know what? I didn't use Dovanix, which costs $300 a tube. It's made in Ireland, which is a socialized medicine country. They don't pay $300 a tube. I would if I had to. That is shoved down my boss's throat as far as if it was a company health plan. And you can understand the problem. They dump it down the rat hole, and in the end, the costs have to come from somewhere. And that's the problem. I could buy coal tar, this particular brand, for less than, I'm not trying to sell this, but for less than about $7 to $14. Does the same thing that a $300 tube of Dovanix. Or I'll show you another thing. Cyflora works wonderful for psoriasis. And the thing that doesn't require prescription at all is sunlight. That's what I use. 10 minutes of sunlight. I'm 51 years old, so why am I going to worry about radiation damage in my DNA if I'm going to get cancer? I only got at best, if I'm lucky, 30 years left of life, assuming that diabetes or high blood pressure doesn't kill me. So if I do 10, 15 minutes a day of sunlight, it goes ahead and it suppresses my immune system naturally. I use Epsom salt, available at Walmart for about, I think that's like about $5 to $7. See what's wrong? That's what's wrong. And the problem is that they put all these wonderful ads on there showing all this stuff, like the issue of 2JO with the wonderful ad that they show. In reality, I use Lantus. Lantus is going off patent. When it does, the cost is going to collapse from $500 a month, whatever insane price that they have per vial of Lantus. They've made an unholy deal with Eli Lilly, so they could kind of still keep cornering the market. That's what's wrong, is the issue of the fact that I learned a lesson in our county healthcare system about treating my psoriasis for a tenth, a hundredth of the cost versus using modern pharmacopoeia. I'm not down on modern pharmacopoeia. I question it. And I question the money that is being spent on this unholy system that is sending a lie, a very clear lie to the Americans. And the issue of our government's powerless to question it, the private healthcare plans don't question it. The media loves getting the ad revenues to hawk all these happy little people with their pharmaceuticals on TV. And the pharmaceutical companies justify the huge end of their costs in research and development, fraud, or in their case, the legal lawsuits brought about the fact of defective products. This is a problem. And the issue of the fact that nobody's questioning it, the fact that if you look at my issues with diabetes, if I didn't have the insulin I needed to live, my option would have been slow starvation. Because the issue is that what I eat and I take into myself, I have to go ahead and use less carbohydrates and less of those kind of foods and slowly starve myself into balance and get my weight off until whatever insulin that is left in my body gets to a balance point. And that literally you become a walking skeleton. You become weak. You can have nerve damage as your blood sugars rise, neuropathy, other problems. I'm still going there with it. But this is what I'm saying. Diabetes is a illness that can be treated in other ways. And I'm beginning to explore those other things and wake up to the fact of the lies that are being spread by modern pharmacopoeia in our medical system. And what makes it worse is a lot of these things about hospitals, and you think you go to the best hospital, you're going to get the best care, the best treatment, the best everything. It's a lie. You can go to your county hospital and get just as good a care, if not better. The issue is that people don't realize that the real costs and the burden that's being borne by the employers in these plans is dragging the employers down too. And so as long as we treat this as a spiral that's going higher and higher and higher, and the Affordable Care Act has not dealt with the cost spiral. It's done nothing. And that's a big problem. The issue is what needs to be addressed is the issue of how the medical system is going to be treated, modern pharmacies being treated, the issue of the fact that the Senate would not haul these characters up in front of them and have subcommittees and subpoena them and demand to open their books, demand to have accountability in the Medicare. They do a little better in Medicare than the rest because that's a government program, it's a single payer system. But there's not that demand of openness and accountability in the system. And this is what's wrong. And it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat, the system is corrupt, it's rigged, it's stacked. An example of Affordable Care Act, it's rigged. There's for Medi-Cal or Medicaid for the rest of the 49 states, they set the limit by people in Alabama, Mississippi for the rest of the country. The problem is a poor person in California is not earning $16,500 a year. That means it's less than about $1,000 a month before you get Medicaid. And then you're fully covered. The war's over with. You got everything you need. This is the problem with a white person like me, in the white rage. Because, for me, I'm probably in the mid-30s as far as income. And so I no longer really get any serious help. Even though I have a high-cost medical condition, the diagnosis would be much better if I had the tools I need to stay alive. And I'm absolutely enraged at all these medical bills I get. I got one just today. They were trying to haul my butt in for $300 I owe them. And they went ahead and they found out I was trying to sell a truck, try to earn $1,000. And they were just monitoring my social media so they could just rip me off money. This is what they do. They look to see if you got any money coming in, and they're going to stand in line and steal it from you. Is this a fair healthcare system where they're sitting there basically robbing a poor man of his lunch money? And I feel like the Bernie Sanders of the world, being self-opinionated, righteous, essentially sitting there saying, I'm going to throw the match into the tank and just blow the whole thing up. whether we like it or not, that's not right either. Even though I'm a fair man, I'm angry, I'm enraged at the system. I don't like Trump's attitude to just turn the dogs loose and let dogs of war loose and let them have at it. That's not going to address the answer either. And the answer of the past to drop dead was a prescription for many poor people. And I remember his tale of this poor diabetic woman who was a waitress who died for want of care. There's a lot of stories of people like that. But I'm also angry at the fact that in my county, I live in Alameda County, they took Health Pack and turned it over to the undocumented workers and essentially told me to go to hell. And a lot of our poor low income people, they didn't put anything in the Affordable Care Act in the state of California. This is wonderful Schwarzenegger little thing when he implemented the exchanges. Less than $1,000 you have 100%. The 80%, I was like at an 80% silver plan. That remaining 10% and usually goes 80% coverage. So whatever your procedure you got, so let's say it costs $100,000, whatever that procedure is, that 20% is going to kill you just as much as the remaining 80% would have. There's no mechanism to fix that. Whether we like it or not, it's still health insurance underneath. Health insurance is a contract. And I've worked in dealing with health insurance. In fact, I studied it and qualified for a producer license in the state of California. I'm deeply disappointed. In fact, in some ways, I feel like just moving to Canada or New Zealand, any place in the world that has a single payer system. The system is fucked up. And excuse me for using a curse word, but it is. For a person like me, a white Anglo-Saxon man, it's fucked up. For if you're a Hispanic or black or person of color, Affordable Care Act's got your back. If you're above the minimum line, you're screwed. And that's the reason why the Donald Trumps in this world. I'm lucky that I have computer skills and I sound like a total racist, and I'm not. I can understand Trump's mentality of the political correctness. It's just the way he says it is ugly. I don't like the treatment of the Hispanic people where they're undocumented and they're treated as wage slaves. It's morally wrong. But I don't think it's equally morally wrong to game the system and make the numbers work so that you basically make it so it's a number that nobody can qualify for. Or you have a crooked Supreme Court decision that disenfranchises people in Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, but yet they hold those numbers against you in California. It's like if you're going to disenfranchise them, those numbers shouldn't count against me in California, but they do. And I think there's a lot wrong there. And both sides will sit there and blame the other side. We're all Americans. We're all in this together. And we all have made this mess because somebody's making a buck off it. And one of the things I noticed, like in the firearm debate, somebody is using the Second Amendment to protect against dangerous weapons that get out there. And a lot of those thugs and people who are using these guns, they buy them from the places with lax coverage, lax laws, and then they sell them or smuggle them in places where they can get a hold of them and just totally circumvent the laws. I understand and agree people have the right to arms. They do have a right to have weapons, without a doubt. But the Second Amendment was worded very vaguely. It meant right arms. Back in the old days, it meant you had the right to farm implements. It didn't say anything about having the right to AK-47 or armor-piercing bullets or worse, and that's considered an arm. Kind of see what I'm saying? And the vague Supreme Court decision essentially opened the door to all this. I think that above a certain point in the weapons, you do have to become licensed and you do have to have a background check and maybe even a psych test, especially if you have the higher caliber weapons, high magazines. I think you have to have a certain level of psychological profiling. A lot of the law enforcement have to have it done. Why isn't it done with private citizens? I have to go ahead and get fingerprinted. I have to get drug screened for a lot of the jobs I have to get. Background test. That's standard procedure in working in IT. Make sure that I didn't fool around with somebody's kid. I didn't steal somebody's car. I didn't embezzle some money. You know, you want me fooling around with your computer, that's what you do. But it's okay, essentially, for somebody to just go pick up a weapon and have at it. And I feel like inside, this is what's wrong. I work for a firearm manufacturer. It means American jobs. I guess it's the only thing that's being made in the USA. is weapons, arms. We're either manipulating the healthcare as a money capitalistic thing when it doesn't have any floor underneath it. It's a bubble. It's just like the property and all that, real estate, and the issue of firearms. I feel there's a lot of wrong in this country. And I feel like a lot of times the church is in bed with these people. They're justifying a lot of those people's actions through belief, you know. And I feel like it's just a lot of people are making a buck off of this. And what's wrong is that sense of truth, the community, and the issue of a moral revulsion of what we're seeing that's going wrong in this country. And the idea of like what the Affordable Care Act was meant to help a person like me, a type 2 diabetic who was low on money, that needed basically to be able to get, at the end of the day, my medicines to keep alive. To the county's credit, Alameda County's credit, thank you. It did work. The system worked. I was able to get my medicines and to stay alive and to complain in this video about the injustices of it. So on that point, but the issue of the fact I was paying last month $700 a month in medical, they denied my medications repeatedly. They didn't cover any of it. And they supposedly said they had a formulary that covered everything. And then they took them 2 weeks to figure out that they're supposed to cover it. And they go ahead and they use these methods and they're all of it to just basically hope that you'll just go away and they can pocket the profit. That's the game. The game is to rat on you so they can profit. And the issue is that is the area of healthcare is an area that's a promise that's like we the people of the United States of America, in order to form a more perfect union, provide for the defense, secure the common good, and secure the blessings of liberty for everyone. Life also comes into that. And I have a different point of view with the church where they're going on and on and on about abortion. What about me at 51 years of age? Many, many men and women died for one of their medicines they need to stay alive. And their attitude is go to hell. And I think the church is morally reprehensible and wrong in this point too. And I took a viewpoint that is opposite of them. Even somebody like me, who has a disagreement with them as direct and as much of a glaring chasm of that, has the right to the care too. There's, if we're talking about the right to life, it's good if you're in the womb to be a Republican, to be that beautiful fetus growing in the woman. It's great to be a Republican. But when you come out, you're a Democrat like me, because now you're the Democrats' problem. And as far as they're concerned, that's all they're going to care about. And that's sad, because in reality, I have just as much right to life as that beautiful baby in the woman's body. But in their point of view, depart from me, for I never knew you. And I think for some of them, when they get to the other side, I think they're going to be read the charges of their short-sightedness. And I see this in all the churches, and I see that they're in bed with them. And they're the enablers a lot of times, and it's terrible. And I can understand the rage of the poor man in the ghetto with a match when you just toss it in there and just blow up master's factory, master's shop. But it's not going to solve the problem. Communism showed that. They went ahead, and the Russians in the Tsar's days, they really mistreated the people, and the capitalistic system turned its back on the Russian people, and the common people rose up and threw them off. But they went ahead and created a system that benefit party people. It didn't benefit and do the most good. I do believe that democracy does work, but I do see the issue of socialism properly managed does bring benefits. There's issues of areas where you need to have a free democratic country where companies can do business. But I have grave differences of opinion in certain areas where they need medical. In my heart, my point of view is the utilities. You don't build repeated power infrastructure. It doesn't make sense. That's called a regulated utility. It's a regulated monopoly. in the cases of hospitals, the providers, they're in each area in beds and the way they are recovered, you doesn't make sense to build 10 different hospitals and have them in competition with each other. You have regulated monopolies. And the insurance companies that provide it need to be under government control. They need to have strict things of what they cover, what they don't cover, and they need to have all their costs regulated, monitored, and the same with the pharmaceutical companies. They need to have it regulated, monitored, and they do. They're under the FDA, but the issues of how their profits, how they generate their returns through their patents, the fact that the rest of the world doesn't pay nearly the costs in recovering what their quote unquote costs of research is. It isn't. And they would deny vigorously what I'm saying, but I know because I've worked for them. And so the issue is they need to be treated like, and that's called single payer health care. I like the European plans. The Affordable Care Act starts going in that direction. And what we need is essentially a health plan that is sponsored by the government, says what it covers, what it doesn't cover. It makes it very clear what the plan has, what the plan doesn't have. And as far as the hospitals that it serves, and the minimum standard of requirements. And the Affordable Care Act goes a lot towards that. The issues that I have is the issue, it needs to be covered across the entire, everybody needs to be under this plan. They need to be under the umbrella of this plan. Everybody. It needs to be covered under one universal umbrella. One universal umbrella as far as in terms of the paperwork, in terms of the everything that it has to be done. I just don't like the Sanders um, Medicare model. I think it's flawed. I think it would still be better to be delivered through an insurance company like the way they do it in Europe and whatever. And I've been in Europe, and I'm just disgusted in his vision. I don't think it's great. But I really don't essentially am that happy about Hillary. But Hillary, whether she liked it or not, she's now joined through that umbilical cord of the president. I supported the president. I was down there with the Tea Partiers. She is held by that cord now of the president's legacy. And now it's up to her to rescue the president's legacy in the health care. It's the issue of the legacy in Libya, for good or for bad, the issue of all these foreign policy things, that legacy is now tied to her, for good or for bad. And her, of course, the critics are going to attack her in her honesty and her truthfulness. I can't really say. That's not for me to say. It's not the issue that I do trust her or don't trust her. I think she's the most qualified. She has the gift, the huge gift of the economic prosperity in the 90s. She's finally discussing it, and I'm glad. There's a lot going for her and there's a lot going against her, but she's the best and most qualified person. I think there's a lot of issues that needs to be addressed in the Affordable Care Act, and they need to fix the issues of the qualification. They need to make the plan much more uniform in the way it's implemented. A lot of places in the country still don't have true competition. There's only 3 or 4 players in the country in any place. And so there's a lot of issues in the long run in this that need to be dealt with. There's a lot in the future. And the issue of the fact that this crooked Supreme Court decision to get this plan implemented for Medicaid, particularly in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, those places in the deep south, the red areas, where they need it badly. And they're kept out from being able to have it. And the issue is, as time goes on, the gradual acceptance of this plan and the hypocritical right will eventually will see that the numbers are improving, and they are. The numbers are improving dramatically for people of color, and ironically, that's number of the pool of voters are the ones that are in the majority that will propel Hillary towards the presidency. She only needs to get maybe about 40% of the white vote, you know, and the rest she can secure through basically people of color. And the Affordable Care Act is one of those keys. It's a tremendous gift to them. If I were her, I would be definitely saying, whatever the lot's going to get in charge, they're going to take it out. The choice is now up to us. Do we save it, try to improve it, or is it basically like what Ben Franklin says, we all hang together, or we'll all surely hang apart. And then the opposite side, in particular in Trump, He's shown every inclination of what he said he's going to do. And that's a promise we all can take to the bank. And there's a sharp, clear divide here. And the issue is what's going to make us win or lose as Democrats. Are we going to stay together? Or are we going to really deal with the promise of making a fairer, more inclusive America? And the issue that healthcare is a fundamental right, and the issue that we've made a tremendous stride in earning a right. And just like civil rights, just like Medicare, just like Social Security, it's a right that has to be fought in each generation. This is now my generation's battle, and I won't be probably leaving any descendants. I wish I could. I wish I had a wife. I don't. I wish I had a child. I don't. But I wish I did. But for whomever's child, be it a Mexican child, be it a black child, those are, I guess, my descendants in a sense. And I'm protecting those people, even as much as I rail against the unfairness that the system was set up. Those are where we say, "CC Flirte." We say, yes, we can. Now it's Hillary's turn to bring that promise to the next chapter of this saga. And I wish her every luck in her endeavor.